I hope you're good and well. I'm doing a book review for Some of Your Blood by Theodore Sturgeon. I found this book on a power list by Book Riot. I sometimes search online for the weirdest novels ever or the most disturbing novels ever. And this book came up on Book Riot's 100 Weirdest Books or something like that. It's from 1961, so it's quite an old book. I would classify it as, well, it's a spoiler alert, kind of. It's a vampire novel slash horror novel. It's primarily about a young man called George Smith who grows up in a dysfunctional family, a dysfunctional home. He witnesses his parents bickering and fighting. It messes him up. He ends up in a borstal after stealing some items from a factory. And he's in Borstal. You see a bit of his Borstal life. He leaves the Borstal, goes and lives with his auntie. And his auntie's house is not much better than his parents' house. So he leaves there and he ends up in the army for a while. And he gets involved in this incident with an army major, like an argument. He ends up in trouble in the army. And there's a subtle hint that he likes blood. This messed up young man likes blood. It's not revealed why, but it's suggested that he's got a taste for claret. A large part of this novel consists of letters and missives between an army major and an army psychiatrist. This young man, George Smith, gets put into care in the army, a kind of detention cell, and they're trying to work out what's wrong with him. And so you read letter after letter written by this psychiatrist to the army major, and maybe one other person as well, maybe three army officials. They're all discussing this young man and trying to work out what's wrong with him. So I would say about at least a third, or maybe even a half of this whole entire novel consists of letters, official typewritten letters within army personnel. Another large section of the novel is a long description of George Smith's childhood, his background and his past, and it's written in a kind of slang, colloquial English, which can be quite jarring at times. I won't say why it's written in this style because I don't want to ruin too much of the story, but that's a large part. I would say it's probably it's like half typewritten letters and half of this background of George Smith's childhood. Thank you for making it to the halfway point of this video. This is a quick message to let you know that I have a range of horror and sci-fi horror books available, and most of them are free. If you enjoy my videos, you might also enjoy my stories. And if you want to receive exclusive content relating to the world of books and horror, consider joining my mailing list. You'll even get 2 free audiobooks for doing so. Finally, if you want to support my work, you can make a donation to my PayPal tip jar. All the links are below. Thank you. Now back to the video. This book gets very Freudian. When George Smith is in custody, the army psychiatrist has long discussions with him as to why he did what he did. And he gets him to do a series of psychiatric tests. One of them is, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Rorschach blot test, where you get loads of like ink blots on pieces of paper and you show it to the patient and you ask them what they see. And, you know, they might see a butterfly, or if they're kind of messed up, if they're a killer or something, they might see a big stain of blood or a big body on the floor. So depending on what the person sees, you can kind of read what's going on in their mind. So he does these tests, and he also does the house test. He gets him to draw a picture of a house. I've looked into this, it's quite interesting. If you get somebody to draw a picture of a house with lots of detail, If you know what you're doing and you know what to look for, you can actually tell quite a lot about the person by the house that they draw. And you can study the angle of the house. So some people might draw a house from above, a bird's eye view. Some people might draw a house which is like where they're looking up at the house. And by looking at the size of the windows and whether there's a driveway, for example, if there's a big driveway, if there's a car in the driveway, they might be thinking about traveling or moving to a different house. If the windows are very big, they tend to have an open personality. There's all kinds of stuff that you can tell about a person by the kind of house that they draw. I think the full test is called the house tree person test. You get them to draw a tree as well. And there's a lot you can tell by the tree that they draw. If there's a lot of branches or leaves, they're more sociable. And it's very interesting. If there's a knot, if somebody draws a knot in the tree trunk, that knot tends to represent some kind of trauma that's happened in that person's life. And you can even tell when it happened to the person by how high up the tree trunk it is. That's been done before. So it's very interesting. These psychological tests are quite interesting. And this is all explored in the novel. I think Theodore Sturgeon must have been interested in this stuff. Or maybe he's got a degree in psychology or psychiatry. And he's kind of injected it into his novel. So it's quite interesting in parts. You could call it a vampire novel with some psychiatry mixed in. Or instead of calling it psychological horror, you could call it psychiatric horror. Unfortunately, this book didn't quite do it for me. It's a very interesting premise and it's very unique. It's a very original novel. I doubt very much there's another vampire novel quite like this one that's explored the vampire genre in this way. And I appreciate that. I don't like it when people do cookie cutter stuff, when writers just copy. I think the author was trying something new here, but it just didn't scare me. And if a horror novel doesn't scare you, it's failed, really. I wasn't scared. I appreciated the whole Freudian psychiatry stuff. That's interesting. I like that. Exploring the subconscious mind. I'm into that stuff, but it was quite long-winded. It's quite a short book, but it felt long. Nothing really happens. It's mainly reading missives between army personnel and reading about somebody's childhood rather than like current events. And both halves of the novel have quite jarring writing styles. When you read the letters between the army officials, it's like official jargon and medical jargon. So it's quite formal. It's quite a formal writing style. And when you read about the George Smith's background, it's like the opposite. It's like very slang, very colloquial. And that's jarring as well in a different way. So I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. A bit disappointing, really. So I can't really recommend it. There you go. Some of your blood. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another book review. In the meantime, try to have a good day on this bloodthirsty, Freudian, psychiatric piece of rock we call Earth. Lots of love. Goodbye.